The gym was silent, except for the faint squeak of sneakers and the echo of a bouncing ball. A 15-year-old boy stood staring at a sheet of paper taped to the wall. His heart pounded as his eyes scanned the list of names once, twice, 3 times. His name wasn't there. Michael Jordan had just been cut from the varsity basketball team. For a teenager who lived and breathed the game, it was more than disappointment. It was devastation. He walked home that day with his head down, fighting back tears. When he reached his room, he shut the door, collapsed on his bed, and cried. The world outside thought it was just another roster decision. But for Michael, it felt like the end of a dream. Failure has a way of branding itself into memory. For some, it becomes a scar that never heals. For others, it becomes fuel. That night, Michael made a silent vow. This will never happen again. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, the sting of rejection, the humiliation of being told he wasn't good enough, would ignite a fire that would carry him to heights no one could have imagined. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was born in Brooklyn in 1963, the 4th of 5 children. His father, James, was a mechanic at General Electric, a man who believed in discipline, toughness, and responsibility. His mother, Dolores, was the anchor of the family, instilling resilience, faith, and a relentless belief in education. The Jordans weren't wealthy, but they were rich in lessons. Michael grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, where the family moved when he was still young. It was a modest neighborhood, but one filled with competition. His older brothers, Larry and James Jr., were athletes themselves, and they never went easy on him. Michael wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the most talented. But he was competitive. Fiercely so. Whether it was playing baseball in the yard, racing bikes down the street, or shooting hoops in the backyard, Michael hated losing. That competitive fire was always there, but it needed direction. When he was cut from the varsity team, it was as if the universe had handed him a challenge. Prove them wrong. Every morning before school, Michael was out on the court, running drills, practicing layups, shooting jumpers until his arms ached. Every night, he returned to the same hoop, repeating the same motions, chasing perfection. His backyard became his sanctuary. The sound of the ball hitting the rim was his heartbeat. Failure had lit a fire. By the next season, Michael had grown 4 inches taller, but it wasn't just his height that changed. It was his hunger. Coaches began to notice. Teammates began to respect him. And soon the boy who had been cut became the star of Laney High School. At the University of North Carolina, Michael faced new challenges, bigger players, faster competition. Doubts followed him again. He's good, but not great. He's talented, but can he handle the pressure? Then came 1982, NCAA championship, North Carolina versus Georgetown. The game was tied, the clock winding down. The ball found its way into the hands of a freshman named Michael Jordan. With ice in his veins, he rose, released, and hit the shot that sealed victory. Overnight, he became a name to watch, but fame didn't erase failure. It only raised the stakes. Michael Jordan's story isn't about talent. It's about resilience, about turning rejection into fuel, about refusing to let failure define you. He once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Failure wasn't his enemy, it was his teacher, and that's the lesson. Failure is not the end. Pain is not permanent. Rejection is not a verdict. It's the beginning of greatness. So when life cuts you from the team, remember Michael Jordan. Remember the boy who cried in his room and the man who became a legend. The roar of the crowd was deafening, but inside Michael Jordan's mind there was only silence. Every time he stepped onto the court, he carried with him the memory of that high school rejection, the sting of being told he wasn't good enough. It was a wound that never fully healed, and yet it was also the source of his greatest strength. He played every game as if he had something to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. In the early years, with the Chicago Bulls, Jordan was electric. He soared through the air with a grace and power that left fans breathless and opponents helpless. They called him Air Jordan, a nickname that would become a global brand. But behind the highlight reels and the slam dunks was a man who was still learning how to win. Individual brilliance could fill arenas, but it couldn't win championships alone. The Bulls were a struggling franchise, and Jordan's brilliance often felt like a flame burning in the middle of darkness. Then came the Detroit Pistons. Known as the Bad Boys, they were physical, ruthless, and unapologetic. They devised what became known as the Jordan Rules, a brutal defensive strategy designed to stop him at any cost. They double-teamed him, shoved him to the floor, fouled him hard every time he drove to the basket. For 3 straight years, the Pistons stood between Jordan and the championship he craved. Each playoff loss was a dagger, each defeat a reminder that talent alone wasn't enough. But Michael Jordan was not built to surrender. Instead of breaking, he transformed. He rebuilt his body, adding muscle and strength. He studied film obsessively, learning every angle, every weakness in the Pistons' defense. He turned their punishment into fuel. By 1991, the tables had turned. The Bulls swept the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Jordan finally reached the NBA Finals. There, he led Chicago to its first championship, defeating Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. It was the beginning of a dynasty. The championships came in waves. 1991, 1992, 1993. 3 straight titles. Jordan was no longer just a star. He was a global icon. His face was everywhere, on billboards, commercials, sneakers that became cultural symbols. Kids around the world wanted to be like Mike. But success has a way of hiding the shadows that linger behind the spotlight. In the summer of 1993, tragedy struck. Michael's father, James Jordan, was murdered in North Carolina. The news shattered him. His father had been his anchor, his guide, the man who had taught him discipline and love for the game. Without him, basketball suddenly felt empty. In October of that year, Jordan shocked the world by announcing his retirement from basketball. He was at the peak of his career, the best player in the world. And yet he walked away. Critics called it weakness. Some said he was running from the pressure, but Michael knew the truth. He needed to grieve, to step away, to find himself again. He turned to baseball, chasing the dream his father had always wanted for him. The world laughed. The greatest basketball player alive was now struggling in minor league baseball, striking out more often than not. But Jordan didn't care. For him, it wasn't about proving anything to the critics. It was about honoring his father's memory, about finding healing in the pursuit of something new. Even in failure, he kept moving forward. Then, in March 1995, two words shook the sports world. "I'm back." With those words, Michael Jordan returned to the NBA. His first games back were rusty, his body still adjusting, his timing off. But by the next season, he was unstoppable again. In 1996, he led the Bulls to a record 72 wins, a mark that stood for 2 decades. He won 3 more championships, completing a second three-peat and cementing his place as the greatest of all time. But Jordan's story is not just about the trophies or the records. It's about the mindset that carried him through every setback. Failure was not his enemy, it was his teacher. Every missed shot, every playoff loss, every rejection became fuel. The boy who was once cut from his high school team became the man who defined basketball greatness. His legacy is not just in the 6 championships, the MVP awards, or the iconic moments. It's in the lesson he left behind, that failure is not the end, it is the beginning. Michael Jordan's journey is proof that greatness is not born, it is forged. Forged in rejection, in pain, in doubt. Forged in the moments when the world says you can't, and you decide to prove that you can. His story is a reminder that the path to success is paved with failure, and that the only true defeat is giving up. So when life cuts you from the team, when the world tells you that you're not good enough, remember Michael Jordan. Remember the boy who cried in his room and the man who became a legend. Remember that failure is not a verdict, it is an invitation. An invitation to rise, to fight, to transform. And when you rise, you don't just prove them wrong, you prove yourself right.